everyone. Thanks so much for joining today. Very excited to talk about this topic. So we'll get into it. We do have the availability to do chat and some questions. I'll hold time at the end to cover questions, but I do have a couple of points where are meant to be a little bit more interactive. So if you wanted to put something in the chat, you surely can. I'm able to see that. With that, we're going to go ahead and get started. Really, I don't want to get in too much about what Works Institute is, but we are a member-driven organization that's really focused on practical solutions, collaborative research, and really utilizing and creating tools that move work forward. So I'd be happy to talk more about what we do. But today, really want to focus on this topic that means a lot to many of us within What Works Institute. So we'll kind of head into the introduction and then get into understanding neurodiversity with practical implications for EHS, some key takeaways, and then future direction. So really some housekeeping items, already covered it, but I will be sharing my slides with the organizers, that way you have them, and I have some QR codes at the end for some of our content. So to start, why neurodiversity? Why does this matter? And really, what's our goal here? We really want to create workplace changes and drive changes that demand inclusive safety systems and ensuring that we are really inclusive of whatever needs people may have when at the workplace. We also are seeing that neurodiversity is often overlooked. And up until recently, it wasn't really a topic that was talked about in the workplace, and in many workplaces, it isn't. And we're really committed to building practical tools that can really support the widest range of people. And we're also kind of talking about this evolution of how we've kind of moved from physical to cognitive accommodation. So traditionally, we focus on physical differences, things like ergonomics, PPE sizing, or lifting capacity. I like to use the example of ergonomics because um, just like we're trying to fit the work to the worker with ergonomics, I guess the same thing could kind of be seen for neurodiverse populations as well. We really want to integrate beyond physical safety to more of this cognitive diversity and ensuring that we're not just accommodating the average man like we typically did for ergonomics previously, but really kind of to improving to accommodate fifth to 95th percentile. And we see that this can go beyond physical safety. Um, the next thing I really kind of wanted to go into, I'm not sure if hopefully the moderator can help me out if we see people in the chat. But I wanted to start with a question on how familiar you are with the concept of neurodiversity and its relevance to EHS systems. So, not at all familiar, somewhat familiar, really familiar, or actively considering it in our safety programs.
I'm seeing some somewhats there.
Okay, some somewhats. Okay.
Yeah, not
Well,
familiar.
okay.
So
Well, you're in the right place then, right? That's what we're here to make sure that we're learning and growing as professionals. So hopefully by the end of this, you've learned something and can take it to your organization. Also did want to start with, before we really dig into it, an inclusion, acknowledgement, and context setting. So neurodivergence encompasses a broad spectrum of neurological and cognitive traits. Each individual's experience is unique, and our paper and resources don't attempt to represent all perspectives or outcomes. But we do try to offer select examples of traits or strengths typically associated with various neurodivergent conditions. These are not intended to be exhaustive or definitive, but neurodivergent individuals possess a wide and nuanced range of abilities, challenges, and coping strategies that may vary greatly, even among those with the same diagnosis. So just want to clarify that our intent is to introduce key concepts and illustrate possibilities, not to categorize or simplify complex human experiences. And also, some neurodivergent conditions are formally recognized disabilities, others may not be. So, this paper acknowledges both diagnosed and self identified neurodivergent individuals and approaches neurodiversity as a dimension of human variation rather than a deficit. Also, just to note, our work is grounded primarily in US based frameworks and workplace practices as of 2025. But different culture interpretations, legal definitions, and workplace norms may vary globally, and adaptations to our work may be required in other contexts. So, like I said, our aim is to inform and inspire more inclusive EHS systems by integrating neurodiversity-informed insights. So, with that, we'll go ahead and really kind of dig into the content. So, for those of you that may not have a good understanding, neurodiversity, there are natural variations. So, it really recognizes the natural spectrum of variations in human cognition, learning, attention, mood, and sensory processing. Really focusing on kind of these varied conditions, which can encompass several different things, including autism spectrum disorder, ADHD, dyslexia, and dyspraxia. So anything from autism, attention deficits, reading and fluency issues to math calculations and processing numbers as well. What we're really seeing is that 15, as many as 15 to 20% of the population may be neurodiverse. But there are really some underestimates, or there could be underestimates to this due to misdiagnosis and later diagnosis. We also see that gender, race, ethnicity, and socioeconomic status profoundly influence the diagnostic rates, access to interventions, and the quality of support services. So we typically say 1 in 5 may be neurodiverse. And we also want to value the differences. So we want to appreciate and leverage unique strengths, creating environments where all individuals have opportunities to contribute. If you're really kind of wondering, why does this matter for EHS or why you should care about this as an EHS professional, we kind of lay out some examples that are relevant to EHS. So looking at potential impacts, strengths, and relevance for each of these diagnoses. So for ASD, potential impacts could be sensory processing, but strengths could be pattern recognition, sustained focus, leading to more thorough hazard identification or record keeping or execution of protocols. For example, ADHD may be seen as impulse control or attention regulation, but that could also be more in tune responsiveness or hyper focus on what they're working on, which can really lead to rapid problem solving and adaptation to unexpected events. For dyslexia and dyspraxia, this may be reading and language processing and also processing of motor coordination and organizational tasks. The strengths could be creative thinking, spatial reasoning, and adapting. And these people might maybe have unique insights into design of tools or workflows, or also understanding of visuals and symbols. With Tourette syndrome, some people don't realize that's one of the diagnoses within neurodiversity. This could include recurrent vocalizations, but they could have enhanced cognitive control and situational awareness because they're always preparing themselves for that, resulting in composure during emergencies and hazard control. So I think it's really important to kind of remember why we want to focus on controlling for as many employees as we can because of the way it all really ties back to EHS. When we're thinking about industry and role specific considerations, really want to reiterate that neurodivergent employees need clear, visually guided protocols and reduce sensory overload. Individuals with strengths and adaptability and pattern recognition could excel in diagnosing unusual safety concerns. Also want to ensure that there are flexible formats for learning things. So to look at these specific industry considerations, if you've worked in any of these industries, you understand that in manufacturing and construction, there's high noise levels, there's complex machinery, healthcare and emergency services, rapid decision making is needed. In office and knowledge work environments, there's extensive documentation and detailed procedures. So kind of linking these back to where particular individuals may really excel and also ensuring that you have accommodations and different controls in place that can help them excel. They kind of focus on the historical concept. The term neurodiversity represents definitely a shift from viewing neurological differences as deficits to recognizing them as natural variations in human cognition. Much like the medical model of disability, which focused on diagnosis, treatment, and treating these differences as impairments to be fixed, rise of the social model of disability. This model emphasizes that societal environmental barriers, rather than individual impairments, are the primary sources of disadvantage. So, inclusion really requires adapting systems and environments to support a diverse range of cognitive styles. And we're really kind of focusing from the 1990s when the term was first introduced to now, really shifting from pathology to potential, trying to educate people on universal design for learning, including multiple modalities, and really helping leaders and organizations understand and embrace neurodivergent talent. So, when thinking about the business case for why you should be integrating neurodiverse friendly practices, really hone in on those examples that I used within EHS. So, improving hazard identification and risk management, elevating quality, accuracy, and compliance, enhanced training efficacy. If you're integrating neurodiverse friendly practices, you could be reducing turnover and talent retention, and also fostering innovation and continuous improvement. The next couple of slides, I'm going to really kind of focus in on kind of the EHS perspective on how you should be or can be integrating cognitive diversity and neurodiversity practices at your location or within your organization. So, from an EHS perspective, uniform safety measures overlook large segments of the workforce. So, if you're assuming everyone perceives alarms similarly, learns safety protocols at the same pace, and finds PPE equally comfortable and intuitive, you're really kind of overlooking what may or may not be going wrong. So, universal design for learning can be applied to safety training and communications. This really represents information in multiple formats. And really kind of enhance the way people are coming to work and perceiving work. So, going into the next poll question before we dig into some more EHS implications, is neurodiversity currently considered in how your organization designs any of the following EHS systems? So, are you thinking about safety communication or training, onboarding, incident investigations, or not sure? I'll give you a moment, and then maybe you can let me know if there's any chatter in the chat.
Yeah, I'm seeing no so far.
No. Okay. Well, there's always opportunities to improve, right? And I'll be showing some ways that you can kind of integrate some of these practices. So really we're going to shift into practical implications for EHS. So we really want to focus from awareness to action with safety practices for all minds. As I said, neurodiversity-informed safety is about designing systems that work for everyone. So just remember that each of these practices benefits the entire workforce, not just the neurodivergent employees. But I would say, if we go back to about 20% of the working population are neurodiverse, think about how much, if that was a different risk factor or a different concern in your workplace, if 20% of your working population was affected, I think we can all agree we'd be doing some things to help those individuals or create a more inclusive environment. So I really challenge you to kind of, as we talk through some of these implications, really think about some easy fixes or some easy ways that you could be not only promoting this, but also including everyone to help make decisions for health and safety. So our report that we put out covers different areas of all these 8, but we're going to be focusing in on these first 5 today. So first, for safety communication, it's really important and to understand. I think all of you probably know this, but communication is the backbone of safety. But when messages rely on jargon, metaphors, and other things, we really risk confusion. So, for example, saying "keep your eyes peeled," that's kind of unclear, right? Instead, we could say, "During the walkthrough today, watch carefully for unsafe conditions and report them immediately." Visual reinforcements also really help. So things like hazard symbols, flow charts, or color coding make messages universally clearer. And the benefit here, like I said, is not just for neurodivergent workers, but everyone really gains clarity on what you're talking about here. And I think we've all probably said, like, hey, keep your eyes and ears peeled, or make sure that you're watching out. But we really need to take a step further and ensure that we're clear and concise in what we're wanting to portray. For safety communication, training is another way, or sorry, for safety training is another way where one size fits all doesn't always work. Long manuals and lectures are difficult for most workers to absorb, not just neurodivergent people. Instead, we can really draw from universal design for learning. So, providing multiple ways to engage, like videos, diagrams, posters, and interactive simulations. One example we have is around lockout tagout training. Instead of a dense manual, you could offer a short video and a step-by-step poster placed directly at the machine. We can also improve training by breaking it down. Even though I'm kind of talking to you now for the next 45 minutes or so, um, don't lead by my example, right? Really having these short modular sessions can prevent cognitive overload and keep employees engaged. Um, and scenario-based training allows workers to practice responses at their own pace. This makes learning active, memorable, and accessible. So kind of take a step back and think about, all of those long SOPs and manuals that you have. Could you take a few extra steps, maybe from an EHS department, and create a step-by-step poster, or make sure that you have pictures of the PPE people should be using at their work cell instead of having to flip through the program? Also looking at the work environment, so it's not just the physical environment, how work is structured also matters. So frequent switching can create cognitive fatigue. Allowing workers to group tasks into focus blocks can improve concentration and accuracy. Predictability can be critical for neurodiverse workers, so a clear, consistent schedule reduces stress and improves reliability, especially during safety critical tasks. And other things we think about are sensory friendly adjustments. I know it may not be easy in areas like manufacturing or construction where you can't really, may not be able to change the lighting or the noise, but even the ability to provide quiet zones or noise canceling headphones in those areas during break rooms, just so people can kind of refresh when they're able to. Another program or work people don't always think about when integrating neurodiverse practices is around incident investigations. But we really need to rethink how we are actually conducting reviews. So providing data only in text form excludes some employees. Instead, we can use visual timelines, written summaries, and even simulations and walkthroughs of what incidents occurred or how they happened. This ensures that diverse cognitive styles are engaged, leading to stronger corrective actions. And neurodivergent employees who excel in visual spatial reasoning can clarify complex sequences, while those skilled in detail orientation can pinpoint subtle procedural lapses. So it's important to understand the people that you may be working with during incident investigations. It's important to understand which way they prefer to be communicated with as well. Um, for some of these too, for root cause analysis and knowledge sharing, using clearly differentiated colors, shapes, or labels for critical elements may be helpful on some of those really deep dives on some investigations. Other considerations for incident investigations are communication gaps. So traditional Q&A methods may not capture everyone's perspective. Some workers express themselves better through writing, drawing, or step-by-step recounting. Investigators should provide multiple ways to share information, like we talked about. Also need to think about misinterpretation of behavior. So stress or anxiety can show up as silence, fidgeting, or kind of a flat or masking effect, which may be misread as evasive or uncooperative. Neurodiverse individuals may use different eye contact, tone, or pacing that shouldn't be mistaken for dishonesty. Also, consider vulnerability to coercion. So, some employees may be eager to please or differential to authority, making them more susceptible to leading questions. So, investigators should use neutral, open ended prompts and avoid assumptions. Also, with false confessions, to escape an uncomfortable situation or maybe root cause analysis, individuals may agree with investigators even if the information is inaccurate. So, building psychological safety, offering breaks, and checking for understanding helps reduce this risk. The next topic is around reporting and psychological safety. So, reporting hazards is only effective if employees feel safe and supported, which we know. But too often, neurodivergent employees hesitate because they fear being dismissed or stigmatized. Solutions include anonymous reporting options, simple digital forms, or visual checklists. And really, we want to hone in on leadership training being essential. Supervisors must know how to respond supportively so employees feel heard. And that really gets into the leadership mindset. So we want to treat neurodiversity as a standard part of workforce diversity, not an exception. We want to frame accommodations and flexibility as routine EHS best practices that benefit all workers. We really want to reduce stigma as well. So address and challenge assumptions about what professional communication or behavior should look like, and reinforce that safety culture thrives when differences are respected, not judged. So, really recognizing high impact, low cost accommodations can make a big difference here too. So, simple actions, much like we've talked about today, like alternative training formats or clear signage or adjusted PPE, can remove some of these major barriers. Most accommodations cost little or nothing, but significantly improve safety and participation. And it really focuses on valuing feedback from all employees. So, encouraging diverse perspectives and hazard IDs and risk assessments and program designs can really help you out here. Neurodiverse employees often notice usability flaws, hidden risks, or overlooked hazards that others may miss. When leaders embrace inclusion, safety becomes stronger, more resilient, and more human centered. And from that, we really kind of wanted to, in our report that you can download, we highlighted this through a case study. So we interviewed an experienced neurodivergent construction worker. He suffered a serious hand injury after cognitive overload in a noisy, chaotic environment. His retrospective realization was that it was not a freak accident. After this, he pivoted to a leadership role and developed visual build books that emphasize psychological safety. So we're going to step through his story. So, Brett highlighted how chaotic, ambiguous instructions caused overload. His build books are an example of clear step by step visual communications that really kind of helped both himself and the workforce after. For safety training, his approach to modular guide shows how multimodal, scenario based learning reduces confusion. For the work environment, the overstimulating, noisy job site directly contributed to his injury. So he said that sensory aware adjustments would have reduced that risk. And at the time of his incident investigation, the injury was kind of written off as what he called a freak accident. An inclusive investigation would have recognized neurodivergent factors and systemic risks. So he really emphasized leadership and culture, that when employees feel safe to voice concerns, systems can improve. His story illustrates the power of leaders who show up, listen, and model inclusive safety, and also how that kind of changed his career and what he ended up doing. So check out his story in our report as well. Really, for our future direction, we're looking forward to kind of digging into industry specific research, looking at emerging technologies and employee feedback loops, and also cross disciplinary collaborations if any of you are interested in connecting with us. We really want to drive the point that neurodiversity is a workforce asset. Inclusive design makes safety stronger for all workers. And like with most things, leadership commitment is essential. So I'll leave a minute here to leave this up so you can use the QR code. But available now is our Integrating Diversity and EHS Insights report. So this has a breakdown of common neurodivergent profiles and how they may show up at work. Like I highlighted a case study. We also have guidance for redesigning EHS systems to support cognitive diversity with practical recommendations. Um, we will be working on a practical implementation guide, which will look at templates, checklists, communication models, as well as a technical application guide. But we're really going to get into what types of alarms people could be using, PPE programs, training environments, hazard analysis, and so forth. So if you scan that QR code, that will lead you to how you can download the report. And just another question I have for you all. After looking at this, what do you think are some resources that would help you incorporate neurodiversity into EHS systems at your organization? So, do you think resources around designing safety training or making emergency procedures more accessible, really digging into incident investigations or sensory sensitivities, or different tools and formats? So, would like to hear from you all on what you think would be most helpful for your organization.
Well, along that line, we do have a couple questions, Sarah.
Okay.
One of them is, how do you, how do we make it possible for employees to feel comfortable coming to us, the EH&S person, to help adjust what we do to help them without getting into HIPAA?
So I think that, obviously we can't just go out and say, hey, I think that this is something that would be helpful for you. But I think it's really about building that rapport with individuals. I know when I was the IH on site, and many times felt like I was the site therapist, and people came to me talking about things that may be going on in their life or how it was affecting them at work. So I think that building that relationship is the primary mode of doing that. And hopefully, people will feel safe enough to come to you, even if they're not saying, hey, I'm neurodivergent or I have ADHD, but just pointing out how procedures could be done better or training could be done better. I don't think you necessarily have to come out with a communication campaign saying, hey, we want to help all neurodiverse people, but you could just kind of ask them, do you think training could be improved? Do you think some of these systems could be condensed? I think coming at it from that perspective may be better, so that way you're not getting into someone's personal medical information.
Yeah, excellent answer. And I love your comment on all this is about communication, being
Right.
able to see from that other person's perspective to where they do feel better about coming to you. And this next question actually kind of ties into that and works well. Do you have any good examples of standard style of say XYZ and a good couple of examples of different options that might help different disabilities um, help different disabilities to see how they would look like. In other words, to communicate with them. So something broad that would maybe give you a good communication base for different types of
Different modes of types of
right.
communication and training. Yeah. We really kind of dig into that in the report, but I think if we think about it, no one wants to read a 90-page manual, right? Everyone wants condensed information. So I think regardless if someone is neurodivergent or not, or what their specific um, concern may be, I think just looking at how will people be more likely to listen and hear to the safety information that you have. So, from a broad perspective, short, concise, short videos, make sure you're getting it to them frequently. But digging into it a bit more on specific examples, we have some of those in the paper. And we would also like to expand what we're doing as well. So if any of the people on the call have examples or would like us to kind of look at their workplace and how things could be improved, we'd be happy to talk about that as well.
Awesome. The only other question we have here from Jennifer Holiday, and the other two are I want to thank Tiffany Harari for submitting those. But this was, do you have strategies for really creating a culture where it's safe for employees to feel safe about communicating these issues and concerns?
Yeah, I think, hi Jennifer. I think for me, always being an advocate for the worker. So
Awesome.
I would always start off, whenever I used to do new hire orientation, I would always say, if it wasn't for you all, I wouldn't have a job, right? Like I'm an advocate for you. That's why I got into this career, right? So I think if you can build that up, and leadership actually is a critical component of that as well. Getting out on the floor, talking to people, caring about people, really kind of leading with humility and understanding what's the worst part of their job, what's the best part of their job. I think people have to see that first. And then, like I said before, they'll be more willing to open up to you. But I will say if there's other questions, that's great. But I will say some of these things are what we are actually talking about in our learning communities. We do have learning communities coming up around human-centric EHS and really focusing on beyond SIF hop, but integrating psychosocial risks, psychological safety. We also have some industry specific, and you can see there where I'll be at some of these events if you'd like to talk. But I do think that, you can't do any of this without a good culture. And it's not just a good safety culture, right? It's just culture in general. And what does that mean? It means showing up for people and truly caring about them. And without that, none of the tactics that I share today are going to work.
Excellent answer. And yeah, and there's some feedback along that line. Again, from Jennifer, culture is driven by leadership individuals. We can influence the best we can, but ultimately without leadership support and
Yep,
the culture won't change. And
exactly.
I could not agree more. And so I love that you do mention leadership quite a bit. I mean,
Yeah,
people don't care what you know until they know how much you care. So
right. Yeah, I completely agree. Are there other questions?
that's pretty much them for now. If you have anyone else has more questions, feel free to put them in.